Hey, welcome to Mad English TV. Look at this sentence. How should we punctuate it? Well, it's easy. We just use a question mark, right? Because it's a question. But what about this sentence? Listen to me. Could I ask you a question? There's a pause in the question. Could I ask you a question? Okay, so how would you punctuate that? Well, I would probably punctuate it like this. Could I ask you a question? Okay, so communicating pauses is one of the most challenging aspects of English writing. You probably know what a period is, right? A period is just the pause at the end of a thought. So when you're finished your thought, you put a period, and then that makes a sentence. So we have a sentence, a pause, another sentence, a pause, and another sentence, okay? But what do we do when there's a pause in the middle of a sentence? That's when things get a little bit tricky. Okay, so how do we show a pause in the middle of a thought? We have to use one of these symbols here. A comma, a semicolon, a colon, a dash, or an ellipsis. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Most native English speakers, I would say like 95% of native English speakers, don't have any idea how to use any of these correctly. Okay, so it's not just your problem, it's our problem. So don't feel too bad if you don't understand these. That's why I'm making these lessons for you, to help you understand them a little bit more. Okay, so in some situations, we have to use one of these, okay? But there's other situations where it's flexible, it's your choice. You could use a dash, or you could use a semicolon or a comma. Okay, let's look at an example. So this girl says, "Did you cheat on me?" And the guy says, "I love you." And she says, okay, she doesn't say anything. She just writes 3 dots. That's called an ellipsis. She just puts an ellipsis. Why? It's because she just wants to say a pause, because he's not answering her question, right? He's dodging her question. She's asking him, "Did you cheat on me?" And he just says, "I love you." Okay, so he's dodging her question, so she just writes a pause. So in this example, we can't use a comma or a semicolon or a colon or a dash. If she wrote any of those, then it would just be weird, okay? She has to write an ellipsis. So she puts that. Okay, so in some situations, you have to use a certain symbol, but there's a lot of situations where we can use different punctuation marks to represent a pause. Okay, so look at these examples here. So Tom and Caitlin are really annoying. They always make a lot of noise and break things. Okay, so that's great. We have 2 sentences here, and it's perfect. Tom and Caitlin are really annoying. Pause. They always make lots of noise and break things. But these 2 sentences are actually quite related, right? So we might want to link them together, okay, and to make them one complete thought. Okay, so right now this is 2 thoughts. We might want to link them together and make them one thought. And there's a few different ways we can do that, okay? One way is to use a dash. So Tom and Caitlin are really annoying. They always make a lot of noise and break things. Personally, this is how I would write it. I like using dashes. Okay, but you could also use a colon. Okay, now in my experience, this is really rare. Okay, most people wouldn't use a colon in this situation. I don't know anybody who would use a colon in this situation, but it is correct. You could theoretically use it, okay? But like I said, I never see it. Or you could use a semicolon. So Tom and Caitlin are really annoying. They always make lots of noise and break things. A semicolon is more common than a colon, but again, like I said, most native English speakers don't actually know how to use a semicolon, so this might be a little bit rare too, but personally I would rather use a semicolon here than a colon, but still my favorite would be the dash. Okay, now we can also try to connect these two things using a word. So we could say, Tom and Caitlin are really annoying because they always make lots of noise and break things. Now, if we say this, it changes the meaning a little bit. Okay, if we say this, that means Tom and Caitlin are annoying because they make a lot of noise and break things. But if we use a punctuation mark, we're not necessarily making that connection. Okay, so if we say it this way, we're just saying Tom and Caitlin are really annoying. We don't want to spend any time with them. Okay? For example, they always make a lot of noise and break things. But even if they didn't break things and they didn't make a lot of noise, they might still be annoying. Okay? Do you see the difference? Here they're annoying because of these things. Here they're annoying and it might be these things, or it might be these things and other things as well. So there's just a very small difference in meaning. Okay, so why can't we use a comma here? Now, a lot of people make this mistake, and this mistake is called a comma splice. They use a comma to connect two things that could be separate sentences. Okay, the reason we can't use a comma here is because a comma doesn't represent a long enough pause. Commas are just for short pauses. Here we have two separate things that could be two sentences, so we need a long pause. We need either a period, a dash, a colon, or any of the other ones we just looked at, okay? So don't do this. This is called a comma splice. It's a very common mistake. Try to avoid it, okay? So like I said, my favorite is probably the dash. This is how I would write it. Now there's two ways you can write a dash. You can put a space on either side of the dash, or you can just have it with no spaces on either side of the dash, okay? The criminal received his sentence, death. All right, so how do we make a dash on the keyboard? Do you know? Do you have any idea how we type a dash? Well, actually, there is no symbol for a dash on our English keyboards. Can you believe it? It's not there. There's no symbol for a dash. Now, this one looks like a dash, but actually it's not. It's a hyphen. Okay, a hyphen is shorter than a dash. We use hyphens in different situations. For example, we use a hyphen in a compound adjective like this, $36. Okay, so how do we actually write a dash then? Well, one way you can do it is you can just Google it, how to write a dash, and then it'll say how to write a dash for Windows or for Mac or whatever. There's different key combinations that you can use to make a dash, but for me, the way I do it is I just type two hyphens in a row and then space, and then it automatically turns into a dash. So most software does this. You can just type two hyphens and then space, and it will automatically autocorrect to a dash. Okay, so I think that's the easiest way to make a dash. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. Most pauses in English can be represented by either a comma or a period. So really, these are the two most important punctuation marks that you're going to use to represent a pause. The problem is that we use commas in so many different situations in English writing that it gets a little bit boring. Okay, so anytime you can use one of these other symbols, you should take that opportunity. Okay, look at this sentence here. My original plan was to become a rock star, a plan I eventually realized. But to get there, I had to work at McDonald's, Starbucks, and Costco just to pay off my recording equipment. Okay, this sentence has 6 commas. That's a lot. So if you use a lot of commas in a sentence, there might not be anything wrong with it, but it just looks a little bit boring and it looks a little bit like overwhelming. Okay, so look at this. Look at all these guys. They're all wearing the same thing. Is there anything wrong with that? Well, no, but look at this. Is it a bit more exciting? Yeah, it's more colorful. Some people are wearing different things. Look, here we have a dash, here we have a colon, a semicolon, an ellipsis. It just makes your writing look a little bit better on the page. Okay, so let's do some homework. I want you to write a sentence with a dash. Okay, just try and post it right down there in the comments, and I'll tell you if you're right or wrong. Okay, see you over in the next episode of Mad English TV. Take care.